I am resident of Colorado for YouTube, Joel Sains. That is my buddy Patrick McRae. That is my buddy Daniel Culver. That is my buddy Alan Gallant.
Hey, the law.
Yes. And we are here to talk the 1996 movie, The Island of Dr. Moreau or Moreau.
Moreau.
Yeah. This movie is crazy as shit. But when did you guys first see this movie, Alan?
I saw it within a year of its making. I mean, it was it went kind of straight to video pretty fast. But yeah, probably within a year. So by 1997, I think I saw it. It is, of course, it has its precursor in the 1930s version, which is also quite
masterpiece.
It is. It is. Yep.
Patrick, when did you first watch this movie?
Oh, I saw it opening night in the movie theaters in Baton Rouge, Louisiana at Tinseltown.
And my buddy Daniel Culver, since you were spared watching this movie, my friend, have you watched any Val Kilmer movies, Daniel?
Any what?
Val Kilmer movies.
I'm not sure, actually.
Okay. Well,
did you see
you
Top
haven't.
Gun?
Oh, you know what's weird? I'm not sure if I have seen that, but I have heard of it.
Okay. Well, you have not missed anything with this movie, my friend.
I don't know.
It's not as bad as I was led to believe with the initial reviews and so on. It's not, there's I think actually there's elements of it that are quite interesting, especially in terms of the way cinematic point of view and things like that. And also the backstory of the whole movie, I think, is incredible.
Who is the lead in this? Because his voice is really unique, and I feel like I have encountered it a lot before, but it may just be some regional accent. He sounds a little like Richard O'Brien.
He's David Thewlis?
Yeah. Okay, so that was David Thewlis. Yeah. What's his story?
British actor.
Yeah.
He was, I think he was also in Rob Roy around this time, maybe a little earlier, playing the villain in Rob Roy. So he's no, he wasn't. I'm sorry, he wasn't in Rob Roy. I'm confusing him. He's in the Harry Potter movies. He plays Professor Lupin or whatever, the werewolf guy.
Yeah. That's ironic.
Which happens after this movie, by a few years, maybe 5 years.
Yeah.
But
so you're not implying they're in a shared universe. You're talking about
no.
Can you imagine?
Well, it would have been a shared universe, I suppose, if Brando had consented to playing Dumbledore or something like that.
Can you imagine what the shooting of those? What a nightmare the shooting of those movies would be?
Yes.
If he had played Dumbledore.
Brando is Dumbledore. I'm not. I want to improvise in the first 3 chapters. Okay,
here's the interesting thing about Brando. We think of him as, the cliche of him as mumbling and the Belushi Brando, but he started his career doing all these refined English comedies on stage, and his accent is very good. I mean, he's very nimble and delicate with language.
He actually
that's really on display here.
Yes, he was an interesting person who, at turns, was motivated and unmotivated by his profession. He sometimes, I think there was some. Sometimes he just reviled the whole process, and I don't know if that had anything to do with the film business more than it did the actual. But I mean, he appeared on Cavett several times talking about how acting was something that everybody did, and he didn't know what the big deal was. And then he proceeded to dissect it and prove to Cavett that yes, acting is something everybody did, and everybody did it well in their own way. Maybe not the same way that I do it, not the same circumstances, but everybody does it and has to do it. It's part of human behavior. So it was. That's an interesting. I think he made that. He interviewed, I think, with Cabot right after he made. Either it was right after Godfather or right after Last Tango, one of the two. So when he had his resurgence, basically, but he had a very strange relationship with his profession in a lot of ways. He would, and people still haven't been able to completely figure out, was he putting them on or was he not? You know,
he wasn't gonna sugarcoat things. He wasn't gonna butter people up.
No, he never did. And he, I mean, you know, of course, he went through his fabled period, the early period where he was associated with, you know, Streetcar and all this wonderful, the vanguard of the method and all this sort of thing. And Strasberg claimed him, even though he only sat and watched a couple of his classes, and then he went over to Hagen, and that's where he really, you know, made his development, or partial development. Although even Hagen said there wasn't much he could do with this guy who just had brilliant instincts. He was just brilliant. You've probably heard the story about the chickens, the theatrical exercise where you're supposed to be a chicken, and then at some point she says, and now the nuclear bombs are getting ready to, you know, they're being launched over your head, and all the other actors in class start panicking. He just goes around pecking the floor. And she goes, "That's interesting. Why did you do that?" He says, "Well, what do chickens know about nuclear bombs?" And she's like, "Okay." You know, and it was a perfect response to it. So, yeah, I mean, the guy was obviously, he just, there was something right here. He knew from his own personal experience, and he was not shackled by anxiety or self-consciousness in it, you know, in those performances. Once he sort of assumed a role, it was there. It was just, he knew how to do that. And at various times in his life, he also decried the method and the people that practiced it. And then other times he appreciated it. He was not always consistent with those, but then again, people change, and you know, so he recognized that as part of the human experience too. Yeah. So he made no apologies for any of that, even when he contradicted himself, which I found very interesting. And I think his experience on this movie was at once a wonderment and a complete disaster at the same time, for depending on who the person was that you talked to. It's like, for the director and several of the actors, he was an absolute disaster, and for some others, it was like, what is he doing? There's something going on here, and it's value. You know, what is he doing? The small person that he had with him, that person was not supposed to be part of the shoot. He insisted on having that small person with him. Weirdly, that small person became the lucky charm of the major league pitcher Pedro Martinez, and he was Red Sox dugout during the 2004 playoffs.
Huh.
So it was like, I don't know.
The handshaking scene's very poignant.
It is. It's wonderful, and I think that although he never explained himself why he wanted to have that man with him all the time, he saw something that was of value there in terms of what he could play off of, with, you know, being the patriarchal figure, that he could display some association and empathy there, so that the character wasn't just a mad scientist. You know, so he saw something there. So that was interesting. But Jules, I have to say, you legitimately, the movie was panned quite a bit. So that opinion was definitely held by a lot of people in the critical world.
I think, you know, some movies get plagued by bad production, and this is one of them.
There
were things that couldn't be helped, like weather. Unfortunately, I think Brando's daughter committed suicide or something.
Yes, that was right.
There are just things that some movies getting made just have bad timing. and bad situations around them. Do I think that's what caused the movie to be better? No, not necessarily. I just think the makeup is good. The practical effects are good. The makeup effects they use here are really good. But I think the story is just too all over the place. It's like I don't really, other than the guy being lost at sea, I don't see the point of them, them keeping him here. All they had to do was let him go and not really give a shit.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
there's almost no point for him to be there, other than he was deserted out at sea because of a plane crash.
I mean, Gilligan's Island got 3 years out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gilligan's Island, sure, but in the
But
same.
that's a classic.
Yeah, that's
Sherwood Schwartz to produce this movie. That's what.
Have you guys ever seen this? It was the so-called real Gilligan's Island. It was like a reality show.
I heard
Lord.
legend.
Yeah.
Tell me that they recorded this and they can find it somewhere.
Oh, I'm not
They
sure.
did.
If they
It
did.
was
I
a
know I saw
reality
one.
show.
Yeah. Oh, Lord.
Yeah. And I felt like it was an odd title because nothing is realer than Gilligan's Island. How do you get more real than that?
And at the same time, how do you get more willing suspension of disbelief?
Oh, that's true. Actually, this is a movie you guys were talking about. Is it like Dragon Ball Evolution bad?
No, not quite. I mean, I've seen. It's not quite that bad, but because again, this movie, though I don't really care for its plot. What really saves it are just the crazy performances. In a sense, Val Kilmer just character completely goes off the rails, which I don't mind.
No, I think it's about the slow descent. There's a part of this movie that's about slow descent into insanity. Obviously,
Yeah.
It's like Heart of Darkness, sort of, in a way. It's
the animals pulling their stuff out was and becoming more talkative and more violent. I think was one of the more interesting turns in this movie, which was really well done and paced. I don't think the movie suffers from a pacing standpoint.
No.
It's very well paced.
Is it proof that Willard failed in his mission? That what we saw in Apocalypse Now is just the beginning.
Yes, right.
Yeah, they went the other road.
Yeah.
Speaking of Heart of Darkness, right?
Your foot, please. Long legs and a long move.
This one thing this movie does not suffer from is a dearth of really good actors. There are some really good actors in this.
Yeah, there are.
Fairuza Balk is really good with what she has to.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
I always think she's wonderful. I wish she did more work. I mean, she does work, but she doesn't. There's not a lot of really high-profile work from her in recent years. But she's quite wonderful in this, and she's so otherworldly anyway. And she really just, I mean, that's just who she is. She's an atypical person, energy-wise, and her appearance is so intense. She's got those amazing eyes and that whole thing. But also, you've got Ron Perlman playing the Sayer of the Law. And it's like, and the guy that's playing Hyena is amazing too. I mean, his energy is just, you talk about, crazy. That's the heart of it right there.
I have to step out for just a moment. I'll be back.
You know whose love interest? You know what movie she played in the late '90s? She played Adam Sandler's love interest in Waterboy.
Oh my God, that's right. That's right. Of course, the movie she's known most for is Practical Magic, probably.
Yeah, probably. Though Waterboy, though, she's pretty notable in that.
Oh yeah, I mean that's pretty high-profile stuff too.
Yeah. For sure. She does a good job in this. Her emotion is very, very good. You're right. The acting in this is good. It's a crazy movie.
Yeah, it like you say, it suffers from a disjointedness that was probably caused by a lot of things that just happened while they were trying to film it and produce it.
I do sort of think though, too, I wonder if they had thought, it'd just be simpler to go shoot this in a studio someplace and fake the location. But I get why they wanted a legitimate island because, again, it's got to look legit. You got to feel like you're there. And sometimes just maybe they just couldn't build a. I remember doing when researching Jaws how most of it was filmed in open water.
Mm-hmm.
But there are that's a lot. It's the first and last movie Spielberg films in open water. Yet, though, there are shots that were shot in the Universal lot. There are certain things that were shot there.
Yes.
And it's like they couldn't find a. If weather was your problem, one of your biggest issues, because you can't control the weather.
No, you can't.
You can't control somebody dying,
especially tropical weather. It can
Yeah,
be
sure.
rather intense. So yeah,
I think there's places you could have went to get the same effect, and or just did a studio thing. But unfortunately, that's what this movie. It's the production that hurt this movie so
yeah.
much.
And once you commit to that kind of location work, you're kind of stuck with it.
Yeah,
You can't. It costs an immense amount of money to completely retool a movie like that.
Yeah, true.
Sometimes you see movies that are filmed on location and they fake the weather, they fake
Sure.
the bad weather.
Sure.
It's like,
Sure.
like it's not a hurricane.
When you want good weather and the bad weather comes, you can't fake the good weather, and that's a kind of a that's the conundrum.
Oh yeah, this all reminds me. Did you guys ever hear what happened with Waterworld with the set?
No,
I can imagine.
Oh, it's actually funny. The reason it was so expensive is they had the set built and it actually got destroyed by a hurricane, so they actually had to rebuild it.
Yeah, that would pretty much kill the budget of any film, I guess.
I saw that in theaters.
Yeah, and that's another movie that kind of got panned that I didn't think was completely unsalvageable. I thought it had some interesting performances in it. I thought, I don't know, I think Jean Triplehorn was kind of a weird choice for the female lead. Do you know Jean Triplehorn's story? She was originally like a local news anchor.
Oh wow.
Well, she was an actress. Yeah, she was. I guess she had done some acting, in school and all that sort of thing. But she was she was not she had not been a high level actor or anything like that. She was an up and coming, news person or whatever. So that was kind of an interesting choice. But I mean, it had so much potential. It just, again, Daniel, you pointed out the fact that they had their entire set swamped, basically, and that's another one of those things that you can't control sometimes in production and can really affect the final product.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, the chosen location for the film was the rainforest outside Cairns in the North Queensland, Australia, including Bramston Beach, Queensland, Mossman, George, etc. Tensions between Stanley and New Line had been growing during pre-production, partly because of Stanley's quirky, insular nature and his marked unwillingness to attend studio meetings.
Yeah, he didn't want to share. He did
Are
not
you talking about
share.
Stanley?
No. Well,
No.
Stanley. Not
Stanley who?
sorry. One second. Sorry. What's his name? Sorry.
While he's looking for that, David Thewlis, other than appearing in the Harry Potter films as
Richard Stanley.
Richard Stanley, the director, right?
Well, he's not the director of this movie, John Frankenheimer.
Okay, that's right. Stanley was what, producer?
Well, he was in 2014, the documentary Lost Soul, The Doomed Journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau.
So he was producer.
So, all right.
David Thewlis, the most recent big movie that you may have seen him in would have been Wonder Woman, the first Wonder Woman, where he played the god of war and destruction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I saw Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Both movies, 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he did play this. He was good in this. His character is like when he sees all the blood vials, it's like,
I think he took his job seriously in terms of driving this movie. He does. I mean, he really does. And I think he acquits himself, in spite of any of the problems that there might be in the movie. I think he acquits himself quite nicely.
yeah.
There's in watching this film, I'll give it this. I don't think it's ever boring.
No.
There's always something interesting going on in the movie. And it has a quality I really like, and of course the response to this could be, "Oh yeah, you said that again." But no, I'm really serious in that there is nothing like it. And if I have any complaint about most movies, is that they are like all other most movies.
Right. Yeah.
It's there's no surprises. I people who know me know that it is very rare for me to make it all the way through a movie. Since they came out with those $18 a month, cards that get you into unlimited films, well, yeah, with the invention of Movie Pass and then the Regal Unlimited, it was game over because I've already paid for it
Right.
a dozen times over. I call movies like that worth the price of admission.
That sounds like an adult theater to me.
That's true.
Sounds like a good tagline for some of the adult films of the 70s.
Oh Lord, I would know none of this.
Who's your favorite character in this movie?
The small person. I really think the little worm man is very touching in the film.
Yeah.
And I'm not making the I'm quite serious. Fairuza Balk is hard to miss.
Yeah, she's one of the most cinematically interesting people of the last 30 years.
The flaw, I think, if there is one in the protagonist and David Thewlis character, is that he is so hostile all the way through to whatever's going on the island that the character becomes predictable. If even for strategic reasons, at any cue, he's going to say the most critical thing possible.
Right.
I'll give him this: he's consistent, but it feels like more of a mesa than a mountain in terms of his character arc.
Yeah.
I think that's just the way the character. I agree with you. I think that's just the way the character gets written.
Oh, sure.
He has to.
It's not him.
Right. He has to perform it that way.
Right.
And really, it's because the script is calling for that type of character because there's no other character to play it either. I mean, they're killing off Marlon Brando's character, which makes sense. Okay, because the animals have turned. That made sense. How they did that. That's fine. Then there's Val Kilmer's character who's throwing pills and is offered himself as a sacrifice.
Well, Val Kilmer's character is very interesting too because he's like this strange walking foreshadowing in the first half of the movie. His whole attitude and energy is like, "Oh, it's dread. It's coming. There's this crazy. It's coming. And all this stuff." So I mean, it definitely serves a sort of a literary purpose, but he also kind of embodies the insanity. Again, as I mentioned before, he's an embodiment. So he's committed to doing that. So he acquits himself doing that, the same way that Thewlis, with a limited script, acquits himself as an actor.
Yeah.
But again, the story reaches a sort of flaw points at certain points because of whatever, the pressure to finish the film because of all the delays. I'm sure there was an enormous amount of stress on just about everybody, which is tough not to have bleed into the actual performances. It's very difficult. But I think the guy, the one person it worked the most for was the actor who played Hyena, because he could just go completely, absolutely nuts.
And I take that back about my favorite character. It's Brando.
Well,
and I don't say Moreau, I say Brando.
Brando is a character.
I mean, he sort of is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go the island itself. The island itself is pretty. It feels threatening before you see an animal. It feels also at the same time exotic, and so the island should be dangerous and exotic at the same time. They pull that off really good here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know if you knew this or not, Jules, but the island of Dr. Moreau is actually extracted from literary work.
Cool.
Yeah.
H.G. Wells.
Master of late 19th, early 20th century science fiction and some horror literature, but science fiction. And this kind of falls under both categories. Sci horror, I guess, is what it is.
Oh yeah. And fun fact: H.G. Wells wrote The War of the Worlds and The Invisible Man.
Mm-hmm.
And The Time Machine.
Yep.
And The Time Machine. Great movies.
He was sort of the English-speaking Jules Verne in a lot of ways, in terms of his interests in genre.
Yeah. What's your favorite scene in this movie, guys?
Favorite scene. The dinner scene is pretty darn good.
It's freak, yeah. It's a total freak. There's so much going on in that scene. I would say that has the most levels of any scene, really, and build and tension and all sorts of.
If you put a black and white filter on that and intercut it with the dinner scene in Eraserhead, imagine what you would have.
Yeah, there you go.
A Holocaust.
Alan, what's your favorite scene?
I would have to kind of go with that. Although I also really enjoy. I thought the opening scene establishes a lot, which not only in terms of foreshadowing, but also in terms of throwing the audience completely off balance. That whole thing in the life raft leading, and then finally the island itself. That whole thing, it really gives you a sense of just being completely off balance, and what's going on, what's really happening here. Is what I'm seeing happening, and this is what David Thewlis is probably working as an actor too. All of this sort of upheaval and anxiety, kind of trying to figure out how to survive and do all of this in this craziness. And the craziness is really established in that whole thing. You have that whole out of the water, into the water fighting going on, and where this is all this animal rage happening. So it's that to me is probably secondary to the dinner scene. The dinner scene is being the most interesting scene.
Yeah. I think my favorite scene is just the introduction of the woman. How really, really good. And by the end too, when David Thoris's character, I'll butcher his name, gets grabbed by the animals, it's like, uh-oh, is it over for him? Because they're in danger. It's like, no. They did a good job there. So
I wish I didn't remember certain things about the first time that I saw it, like that she was actually a creation of Dr. Moreau. I wish I didn't remember that from the first time that I saw it, because that's kind of a cool thing. That's a cool part of the whole thing.
Yeah, I had never seen this until Patrick recommended it, so the reveal was good.
I don't know if I'd use the word recommend, but I suggested it.
Yeah.
Well,
It takes all kinds, and it really does in terms of film appreciation. It does.
This is an endlessly fascinating movie. I mean, it does not commit the greatest sin a movie can commit, which is to be boring.
Right? Yeah, it's true.
How's Tuesday for the next movie? We'll do Tuesday.
For Evil Roy Slade?
Sure.
Sounds good.
Was done on
You're really gonna like it.
Yeah.
It's on archive. I'll send it to you, Daniel. Does anybody else need it?
Yeah, send it to me
Put it,
Okay.
put it in the chat.
because I actually do not have it on.
I'll put it in the chat, and I'll also send it on Facebook Messenger for you guys.
Thank you.
So, does anybody want to add anything about the movie?
I would rate this probably a 7 for audacity, and probably a 4 for horrendous problems with production, and probably another 7 for actor effort.
Yeah.
Considering what they were dealing with,
Yeah.
maybe an 8 for actor effort.
Yeah. Patrick?
Oh, I give it about an 8.
Yeah.
I think it is weird enough and unique enough, and it's fun to watch Marlon Brando having fun in this movie, and it's clear that he is.
Yeah, well,
And
he's in complete control of what he's doing because he's insisted on doing it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it is kind of fun.
Yeah. I think too, like as the first time watch, his character's death is shocking too. You're not expecting it to come. I don't know where the scissors are, but yeah, Alan has scissors. I'll give this a 6.5. The actors did a great job. The makeup effects does a great job. The movie is zany as fuck, but it's something else.
Yeah, it's something we didn't discuss. The makeup and practical effects are good.
Yeah, they are. They do good. The makeup crew and the department deserves an A+. They definitely did a hell of a job on everybody. And by the way, this is not Ron Perlman's first go around makeup, because he would do a little series called Beauty and the Beast.
That's great. Back in the early 90s. Yeah.
Yeah. He's used to getting in the makeup. And he would also do that later in his career, get back into makeup and doing a little movie called Hellboy.
Oh boy.
Ron Perlman and practical effects go together, like peanut butter and jelly.
Yes. Peanut butter and chocolate.
Yeah, there you go. No, not mint and chocolate chip.
Yes.
There's a special place in hell for people who eat mint and chocolate chip.
Yeah, you're there with me.
I will. I already have a reserved seat. Anyway.
My VIP. My +1.
Yes, I will always be your +1. Anyway, links to Daniel Culver's YouTube channel, Killerberg, is going to be in the description box. Link to Alan Gallant's YouTube channel, Colin Sport After Dark, is going to be in the description box. And link to Patrick Cray's Dark Shadows Day Book Unbound is going to be in the description box. Gentlemen, I'll see you Tuesday night.
Okay, yeah.
Bye.